Yo, what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in today. It's episode 5 of King's Mentality.
What's
What's going
up?
on, everyone? How's everybody living?
Yeah. We got a special topic today with Father's Day right around the corner. We felt it's only special to give all the wonderful fathers a little shout out. You know, the fathers kind of go under the rug sometimes. So,
Absolutely.
King's Mentality, we're going to put them right in front. So, this episode is dedicated solely to the fathers. I know we all grew up with some great fathers in our household, so I feel like it's definitely important to get that out there for not only the fathers that we were raised with, but all the fathers out there that are doing wonderful jobs in their kids' lives. So, let's talk about some personal stuff real quick. So,
We diving right in. There you go.
let's dive right into it. So, what are some of your favorite moments, like with dad, uncles, or anybody, any father figure in your lives?
I would say for me, because I was very much a tomboy growing up, playing basketball growing up, my favorite memories, I think, were just that time spent playing basketball, whether it be training, whether it be in the car after games. We know how those conversations can go. Whether it be traveling to tournaments. I think those are really special moments and a lot of nuggets and lessons that I still carry forth today happened in those moments in the gym around basketball. Not only those lessons, but just the work ethic that my dad instilled, like waking us up when we were like in middle school at 6 a.m. to go work out. It's something that was normal to me. And then when I got to the next level, it wasn't that big of an adjustment because I had been doing that for so long. So I appreciate him kind of exposing me to hard work and that type of stuff really early.
Yeah. What about you, Luke?
On my end, it's kind of similar in the sense that a lot of my, now that I look back, like I guess at those specific points in time, they weren't my favorite moments, but like the lessons that I taught in some of those training, like when we, were kind of training and it was kind of showing us the ropes from that perspective. Like me and my family, like we were always taught to fight from a really, really young age. So like having a dad 6'4", like 225, 230, kind of, having to deal with that as a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, definitely was a nice wake up call. But no, it was just more so the willingness to kind of show you and just be a great role model in terms of setting an example of what real work ethic is, where it can take you, and kind of having that specific principle. If you really kind of value that principle, where it can kind of take you in life, I think like that was definitely something important. Just some of the favorite moments that I've shared with my dad, and then I definitely say, whether it was his little speeches at family events or little things like that, it's just kind of those consistent little memories that you build up over time.
Yeah. I would say for me, kind of like Amber, growing up in the basketball house, like those conversations and that work ethic was definitely still early, but it transferred into later in life because you see not a lot of people work that hard, and when you grow up around, it's normal for you, but everybody else is like, oh, like why are you doing so much? Like why are you working so hard? But I mean, it was kind of instilled in me from early, so definitely I would say that like helped me with my success on and off the court. So and also it gave me tough skin.
Yeah,
again,
that's tough love. I'll let you
Real
go.
tough skin.
Tough love, those conversations in the car didn't always go too well. But I mean, at the time, you kind of get a little hurt. But it's like you learn to take criticism, and you learn how to like use it for betterment. Like a lot of people
criticism straight for 45 minutes.
Yeah,
literally, until you get home, and maybe.
Yeah.
And even when you get home, it gets worse because you're
that game. I'm like, I don't even want to get in the car. I almost. I remember one time it was halftime, and I was playing so bad that my dad got out of the stands, came in the locker room, and the halftime was just cussing me out. Like, what are you doing? So I appreciate the tough love, and he always held me to a very high standard. So when I got to college, I think a lot of people had issues with the coaches being too tough or saying things that were a little personal, but growing up with your dad being like that, it was like, no, whatever.
I know, it's when that tone is kind of set as well, like especially that's interesting. Like you mentioned that, like when you kind of get older and you have like tougher coaches, or you think you're gonna have tougher coaches, it was kind of, I was kind of the opposite in the sense that I really kind of didn't have a tough coach, and I wanted to, because like the way my dad had kind of set the tone in that sense. Like I needed that like rowdy coach that was gonna like cuss me out every now and then. I didn't really get that, especially in my college career. It was kind of like a shift in the pendulum for sure. It was interesting. And especially when you have that kind of like ingrained in you for such a long time, that was definitely like an adjustment when I got to college. But let me ask you guys this: if you didn't if you hadn't played basketball, like how would have that changed your relationship like with your pops? Like, do you think you would have a better relationship? Would it be harder to, because you haven't found something to kind of bond with? Like, how do you think that would have changed it?
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, basketball was just like the sport that I played, and like he just
Okay.
like, it's just something they threw me into, and like we just took it
Right.
from there. But I mean, he was my coach from like, I would say up to maybe like 6th or 7th grade. So,
Okay.
but outside of basketball, like the bond was still there. It wasn't like solely basketball, because again, he only coached me to like 6th grade, and then like I was just let go. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, like everyday life was still cool. I mean, it was just more so on the basketball court, it's going to be a little like be serious. So
Yeah.
And I think for me, it may have been a little different. I think basketball allowed us to spend a lot of time like very close together. Um, if I had done something else or played a different sport or didn't play sports at all, I think we still would have spent that time together. There are a ton of other things that our family does together, like fishing, like loves
Right.
fishing, we always go fishing. My love for cooking is mostly because of my dad, the time spent with him in the kitchen. So it wasn't just basketball. I think basketball had a huge impact, and I think our relationship is as strong as it is because of basketball. But I don't necessarily think that it would be completely different if I didn't play, because there were so many other things. He was present, throughout basketball, daily life, whatever we did, he was there. So.
Yeah, I think we were definitely all blessed in that sense, because like I've definitely seen, I don't know about you guys, but like especially growing up, and tennis is a very unique sport in that sense, but we grew up like with seeing a lot of pushy parents kind of, trying to live their dreams to their kids. Like we had just people that we knew kind of in like the tennis world as we were growing up, like they were pulling their kids out of school, like full-time tennis, like 6 hours a day, like just absolutely pushing them like every single day. And it like got to the point where it affected him, like not in a positive way. A lot of those kids just burn out just because of I was just interested just to kind of see how the relationship could have differed, if they didn't have that constant pressure and things like that. So it's just interesting just to hear perspectives.
Yeah, and I'm interested for you guys. So since I guess we're all washed up retired athletes now, how has your relationship with your fathers changed? Because I know a lot of it, growing up, it's centered around activities and sports and things that you do together. But now, what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah.
for me, so like the conversations are more so like about manhood and like post athlete life, like career, and like what are you gonna do, like how you gonna raise a family, and kind of those conversations rather than like sports related or only basketball related. Like, so as a man, I'm hoping to have, I guess, a wife here, something here soon, like the next couple of years. But it's like kind of just picking his brain towards how did he do it when he met my mom, or like how did he do it when he first had me, and like how did he raise a family. So just picking his brain on like a family aspect.
I think with me, like sport was always kind of ingrained in our relationship, like just in our family's relationship though. Like sport was always a talking topic. It would kind of be the myself, my brother, and my dad speaking about sports at the dinner table, and like my mom and my sister would just talk about something else, like just because we would just have that conversation consistently. But especially with me kind of moving to America for college, it was different in the sense that like he couldn't come to my games, or he wasn't watching me live or anything like that. So it was completely different anyway. So those conversations changed over time. And after kind of graduating, it's more so like if we would speak around, kind of sporting events, whether maybe it was boxing or soccer or kind of, a big sporting event. We kind of had conversations like that. But, it's more so those type of conversations. Yes, you have, but again, you kind of check, like Dev said, you kind of chip away. I kind of see like my dad is a library of just like knowledge, and I just try and pick away at him, like whatever the case can kind of be. Like a lot of the things I'm realizing that I may be experiencing, my dad's already experienced.
Yeah.
And some of those conversations are easier to have than some others. There'll be some topics that are definitely, you know, easier to talk about, but it's kind of just gauging when's the right time to have those conversations, and just knowing the relationship.
So how was your relationship with your dad different than your brother's relationship with your dad? Since your pops was a boxer and it was like heavy in the boxing,
Yeah.
your older brother was heavy in the boxing. Like you necessarily didn't really take up that path. Like,
Yeah. We were really blessed as kids. Like our parents were never pushy in terms of like what sport that we did. You know, so my parents were both like former world karate champions, so they definitely had always like taught us how to fight. Like that was just a natural thing. So like we kind of all had that kind of foundation, I guess, when we were kids, and then my brother kind of just turned it into something, you know, unique of his own, where he kind of took up boxing. But even that relationship, like my dad has took like a very laid back approach in that regard, especially in boxing and like in combat sports. You'll see a lot of the time when you know, a parent or a sibling has done like really well in kind of that realm of the world. Like there's a lot of pressure on the younger, you know, up and coming kid whose dad's got a huge name in another, you know, kind of aspect of combat sports. So it's trying not to associate yourself with a name. I guess it depends. Like a lot of people will have no association. Like they'll try and make a name for themselves, and then some people use the name to kind of, you know, propel them to where they want to get to. And things of that nature, but it didn't affect our relationship too differently. I mean, you know, my brother will ask my dad things about, you know, just the basic things in fighting that, you know, my brother could take from karate to boxing. But from the perspective of, you know, maybe them spending more time like with that regard, like not as much anything more so now, just because I'm not in England, I'm not able to see like and be around my brother's kind of training and the things that he does. But yeah, he's definitely a lot more involved like from that regard.
Okay. I got a question. So if y'all could pinpoint one thing, like one key thing that y'all learned from your father, what would it be? One. I'll go first.
Okay, go ahead.
As I was thinking, give y'all some time to think about it. And I'll say it's more than just me and my family. Like my dad was like heavily involved in community, whether it was coaching, whether it was volunteering, whether it was coming up to the school and like really interacting with other children as well. So just really giving time and effort outside of, you know, us and our family or distant family, like really engaging in the community, making sure like you're doing what you need to be doing outside of your own household. So if it was for me, like one thing I would say is it's more than me and more than my family. So.
That's a good one. I think for me, my dad always instilled in me to be a lifetime learner. So obviously growing up, like your parents, you feel like your parents, they have all this knowledge and they know everything. But my dad was always very clear and encouraging me, hey, we don't know everything. You should always be curious and knowledge, no matter how much you think you have it figured out. There's always a new tidbit that can evolve your mindset and improve your way of thinking, improve your way of life. So my dad's given me a ton of things over the years, like as far as providing for me or gifts, but some of my favorite gifts from my dad are books that he's given me. Just because I don't know, I think it's special when he reads a book and he's like, you know what, I want to give this to my daughter. I think she would benefit from this specific information. So I think my love for reading and just learning new things comes from him as well.
That's dope.
For me, I would say just that there's that kind of the main, you know, you can go on and on, but one of the main things that I learned from him is just that kind of that word of productivity. There's always something more to be doing. Like I always would see my dad working, like whatever it was, like, you know, it didn't have to be anything, just anything specific, but my dad would always be working, like whether it was you know, working out, whether it was something to be doing on the laptop like early in the morning, whether it was like little things you could take care of, just having that kind of second habit, second kind of nature or mindset of just working and trying to be productive as possible is definitely something that kind of he instilled in me. Like I'll always kind of ask myself, like, you know, during the day, okay, like what have I done today that was productive or positive or, you know, constructive to helping me achieve like the goals that I kind of set out to accomplish. Oh, sorry guys. Technical difficulties, you know. But yeah, those are definitely some of the things, or, you know, kind of something that I picked up from my dad that was definitely important.
Okay, so so why do it's so important to have a father in a child's life? Why do I think it's so
I
important?
would say for me as a woman, I'll just bring the women's perspective. Um, I think for me, it helped me, one, feel confident in myself because I knew that my dad loved me and my dad was there for me no matter what. And I think that confidence carries over into your like romantic relationships. And then also the qualities that I see in my dad that I admire, like I have a very clear blueprint of what I would look for in a man or what I would look for in a father to my kids. So I think for me, it's just like having that confidence that there is a man in the world that is for you and loves you. I think a lot of women who may not grow up with their fathers in their lives are searching for a lot of time. So I think that was a really big impact, and I think women benefit from having their fathers in their lives from that perspective.
Because I would say this, yo, daddy issues. It might be funny, but that's a real thing. Like,
It's a real thing. It
that's
is.
a real thing. Because like if that father figure is not there, you search for it in other men that might not be the best for you. So definitely a real thing. I would say from a male perspective, one, obviously to teach you how to be a man, like to instill some principles in you, values, show you what you should do, what you should not do, but also to teach you how to treat a woman, like teach you how to be in a relationship with a woman. Because like as a young boy, like I'm gonna treat my girlfriend, wife, how I saw my dad treat my mom. Like, and that's just natural. So like he's out here doing X, Y, and Z. More like him, yeah, out here doing X, Y, and Z, because like that's what you think is normal because you see your father do it. Like a lot of men don't realize how much like your children are watching in everything you do. So again, like for me, one, to like really, I guess, instill the principles in me to like how to be a man, how to treat people, to be nice to people all the time, and on the flip side, to like really see how to treat a woman. So
Yeah, I think like just fatherhood in general is such an interesting concept, especially in comparison to motherhood. I like just from the state of kind of comparing them, it's like I think with fatherhood, I think it's definitely harder for males to kind of find fatherhood as for women to kind of find motherhood. I feel like with women, it's kind of, you know, with actually having that kind of physical attachment from having to give birth to a child, that they automatically kind of, you know, are just built to deal with those type of situations better. I feel like that's just something that women are capable of handling for a number of reasons. But I think with fatherhood as well, like on kind of the flip side to that, they're like, you know, if you don't kind of have that father role, or don't kind of have that father figure, or, you know, there's a father figure in someone's life that maybe isn't a positive aspect, like how does that kind of factor in? You know, do you pick up his traits? We've definitely seen that in some cases, but in some other cases, you know, you may kind of learn from your father's mistakes, or kind of your father role, you know, kind of mistakes that you see kind of, you know, come to fruition in whatever relationship that you have with him, and that you see in, you know, kind of just day to day by, you know, just watching him and how he acts and interacts with individuals. I think that's something that, you know, is a real interesting point when it comes to fatherhood, just because, you know, some men take on the role, you know, like all they want to be is a father, and some kind of, you know, kind of shy and run away from it. Like you'll see like a lot of kind of fathers, you know, abandoning families, and, you know, whatever the case may be. But it's interesting. It's kind of like a fight or flight situation that I've kind of seen. You know, a lot more fathers can just up and leave, as to you know, a woman being able to just kind of leave her baby. It's kind of a different scenario.
yeah.
but kind of going back to, you know, why you think it's important, I just think I went on off on a complete tangent, and then I realized you got to bring
Back
it
to the
back to
topic.
the main question. But why it was so important? It just kind of sets the blueprint. Like Deb was kind of alluding to. It just sets a blueprint in a way that allows you to kind of follow that path, even though you are so already subconsciously, just because you're picking up all these traits from your parents. So so you're subconsciously kind of acting on some of these things already. It kind of just sets a very nice kind of blueprint out for the way that you may think you want to, live in terms of, being a father from that perspective and regard.
Yeah, I kind of have to piggyback on a point that you said. Like, if you grow up in, I guess, a father who negatively impacts your life, so say somebody grows up with an alcoholic father, right?
Right.
It's kind of two ways you can take that. It's like, one, you can use that not as an excuse, but like as I guess, a gateway to following your father's footsteps, and like, oh,
Yeah.
my dad's alcoholic, I'm an alcoholic. Or you can use it as motivation, I guess, defiance, to make sure that you never slip into that path. Like,
Right.
so if grew up in a where your father was abusive, like, you might literally say, I would never put my hands on my children or my wife, like, just because I grew up in a household to where that was normal. So I think the negative aspects of a father can definitely it can hurt you, or you can use it as I guess a building block to, like, really strengthen you to how you move.
The psychology around that is so interesting though, because it's kind of like a lot of individuals that, kind of, let's just use kind of, alcohol as a kind of example, but, alcohol abuse, like a lot of those individuals, and kind of, let's just, kind of stay on the topic of fathers, like fathers who are, maybe alcoholic or, abuse alcohol, like it'll stem from, their father having, abused alcohol, and then seeing that. So like that's such an interesting kind of aspect, that you have kind of the choice of like, oh, I'm going to, not let that define me, or, I'm going to let that define me completely and become kind of my father in that regard. Like that's so interesting how the human brain kind of like decides. Like it's like everyone is so different, and it's kind of like different paths that you can take with it.
Yeah, and a lot of it is subconscious. So even if that's a pattern that your father carried out, and you in your mind are saying, I'm not going to do that, a lot of times it still ends up happening.
Right.
Just by nature of that's what you saw. Like, I think to your point earlier, Dad, like, kids are watching, kids absorb things on a level that you have no idea until later.
Yeah.
So it is, hopefully, people in that situation who do have fathers who are, exhibiting negative behavior, other positive role models around them, to kind of give them that mindset, like, yes, your dad's doing this, but you're going to break that cycle, because a lot of it is subconscious, and you can tell yourself that you're not going to do it, but it still ends up, that cycle continues.
So let's segue a little bit. We talked about the father being in the household. However, how do y'all think it impacts when a father isn't in that household? And I can start on that. Kind of going back to the daddy issues, quote unquote, but like, I mean, that's a real thing.
Devin needs daddy issues, yo.
No, because like people like joke about it, but that's like an actual real thing. Like, right. Especially from a woman's perspective, like, if that father figure isn't there, then literally, like, they're going to constantly seek out that validation from a man that they've been wanting their entire life. And even if the father isn't there, and this can be from either or, like from a male or a woman, like even if the father is there, but it's not an actual connection, like a genuine connection, they will seek out the masculine love that they didn't get from that father figure that most people did have. So yeah, that father figure being there, and then it can also lead to like defiance and like antitrust, to like, okay, if my father's not there, so I got to act out because I'm not getting the attention I need or deserve. So now I have to act out in different ways in my aspects of my life. So, I mean, and that can be in a positive sense. So like, you can be extremely focused and extremely hardworking, and you kind of take all that anger to a positive aspect, or it can lead to a negative aspect to where you skipping classes, you and stuff, you define the laws, and like you go down that path. So definitely, I feel like a father not being in the household has a lot of impacts that people don't realize.
Yeah. And I think also, aside from just the emotional, acting out or seeking validation, I think growing up in a two-parent household period is just better for children, specifically just because there are likely also two incomes in that household, and you have access to a lot more things when you have two incomes in a household. So obviously, the emotional ties and the psychology of it is super important, but a lot of single mothers, they struggle a lot, and they have to make incredible sacrifices just to make sure that their kids have what they have. So I would say that sometimes gets overlooked. I know we focus on the psychological, but just the fact that two people are contributing to a household income is really important too.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting point. But in kind of contrast to that, what I think is really interesting as well is that like some of the kind of amazing success stories kind of come from those single parent households, like whether it's a mother or a father, but a lot of the times like a single mother household or a household where the parent wasn't there. So I think like with not kind of having a father in the household, the lessons that you learn are deeper or kind of amplified a bit more in the sense that one, you may have to experience certain things by yourself and kind of not having that father figure to show you those little things that a dad would usually teach you that you may not able to learn just because you don't have that father figure there, kind of having to learn that on yourself. Like maybe it makes you grow up quicker, not necessarily saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but how that can be used and how that kind of fuels an individual, and seeing their mother, struggle the way they struggle, or seeing their family struggle the way their family struggle from that perspective of not having a father in the household can really motivate someone and give someone kind of the fire that they need to go out and get what's theirs from that perspective. So I think it's just so interesting, like, to see how kind of having a father and not having a father that can fuel someone, because you'll always have someone saying that they would absolutely love to have a father figure when they were growing up. And then it's interesting, you have like some individuals that have the father figures that wish that they didn't know their fathers at all or have anything to do with their fathers, whether it's the amount of time that they were given as a child, or just the relationship they have in general. Like that's definitely an interesting aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, that can get deep, bro. Like that can really
What
get
I'm
deep.
saying, I was trying
Yeah,
to.
'cause, like again, even the father, if the father wasn't there, if you're not putting in the time and the effort, it's like
Exactly. It's going through the motions, and that's the thing. Like, we live in such a society that is, such a go through the motion type of environment. Like, from what we know and kind of what we see in our society, the dad is the stereotypical, has the 9 to 5, the 9 to 6, doesn't see their kids really until the weekends. He sees them for an hour or two, during weekdays. And if you, especially like so let me ask you this, Dev, like you said you had a dad. My dad was very similar in the sense that he was a community man. My parents, run a non-profit for 28 years. So having kind of a father figure that is so involved in kind of other people's lives, and sometimes that definitely I can speak for myself. Definitely, like there was sometimes and some occasions where you know. I guess kind of people's needs and wants came before mine. And as a kid, like I saw that as kind of an issue, because I kind of saw it as my dad, putting other people's like needs and wants before mine. But like, as a young kid, you don't kind of understand like what's going on, and that can kind of drive you, down a different path. But I was able to kind of see, the bigger picture of why it was being done and things of that nature. So, do you feel that impacted you? Did you ever experience that when you were younger growing up?
not necessarily. Because again, like he kind of told me what he was doing it for and like why he was like giving the attention elsewhere.
Right.
And again, like if that message was instilled in me early, which it was, I knew it wasn't coming from a bad place. So
Right.
like when he did give other people attention or other um, things attention, yeah, I knew it wasn't ill intent, and I knew it wasn't like anything bad. So yeah, definitely don't think it was any negative aspects. Yeah.
Well, my Look, I think it's awesome that you guys' dads are like so involved in the community and, being that figure for others. You remember I told y'all we moved like every 3 years, so like we didn't really have like a set community. So my dad really was like all about his family, all about like making sure his family was good. And I think a lot of that was because we moved around a lot, and that's really all we all picked up and took with us was our family. So I have a different perspective there, but that's really awesome to hear though, to hear you guys as dads making that impact.
Yeah. So I think we're good. Or do y'all need to we got any other things to touch on?
I guess I was just gonna kind of segue into like kind of other individuals. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but just having other individuals in the household maybe playing the father role. That's kind of something I wanted to relate to. So, maybe not having that father figure in the household. So who assumes that authoritative role? Does the single mother have to, pick up that role? Is it maybe the eldest male in the house? Do they have to assume that role? Like, what do you think like kind of the impacts can be there of an individual having to take that role that may not be, the father?
I mean, well, for me, I am the oldest brother. Well, I'm the oldest child. So, like, split up. So when we go to my mom's house, I would be like that, I guess, that male figure for my little brother. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy because I was reading something. It's like the oldest sibling can teach the younger siblings almost more than their actual parents can, depending on how much time they spend together. Like my little brother is literally a little me. Like it's crazy. It's actually crazy. Like being that we did go back and forth. Like when we were up at my mom's house, I was kind of that male figure for him to. I mean, obviously, I went back to my dad's house. Like, he took that back over, but yeah, I played that. I guess that male figure for my little brother when we were with my mom only.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like having those, maybe the same type of messages relayed in different ways, especially from a different figure, like like an older brother or something like that, can always resonate with someone like a lot more. Like I know, like my dad would tell me like things like a bunch of times, and like until I heard it, maybe from my brother or my sister, like in a completely different way, it only clicked with me. Like there's things that he told me to do like so many years ago, and like, I've only just started doing them. Like, oh, okay, like that makes sense now. And it's just, it's a lot of the times it's just because you hear it from your dad and he says it in a specific way that you don't like. Like you definitely have those kind of, whether it's ego, whether it's stubbornness as a child, like you have those kind of tendencies maybe to not pick up on those things straight away.
Yeah, I agree. I think and obviously this is speculation, but I don't know if I could even picture my brother being a father figure just because he's so chilled and laid back. But what I do think is important for me that I really look up to my brother is that he's the most level-headed, even logical person. So like when everyone else in my family is like, "Ooh, going crazy, going deep end," he always has like that perspective to bring everybody back to center. And I think he does get from my dad, and that's kind of where I see it. But I don't think I could see him as a father figure. But he's definitely someone that I look to just for perspective. And I think I would probably be so much more hurt if I ever disappointed my big brother. Obviously, I would be hurt if I disappointed my dad, but like that would just kill me.
So Amber, just another one. Why do you, or not so why do you, or do you think that, kind of fathers and kind of the father role and fatherhood is kind of swept under the rug? It's not much so as kind of talked about or is important in comparison to motherhood, or is it just because motherhood just kind of weighs more or is more of a factor in comparison to fatherhood?
That's a good question. I think to your point earlier, there's something different about birthing a child. Different connection I think you have with the child immediately. But I don't necessarily think fatherhood swept under the rug. I do think that single mothers are louder than single fathers. There are plenty of single fathers out there that are doing their thing that don't necessarily get the recognition. But I also think that a lot of times fatherhood is looked at as a provider role and a role. and a lot of the other roles that fathers play are overlooked. So for me, my dad was absolutely a provider and absolutely authoritarian, but he was also emotional support. He was also very present in my day-to-day activities.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not the case for a lot of people. You mentioned earlier, like my dad worked really long hours, and sometimes we only really spent quality time on the weekend.
Right.
But I think quality over quantity in some of those cases. So
Yeah.
even if we didn't spend as much time together, it was really high quality time, and it wasn't just him being a provider and authoritarian. Yes, that was a major role, but I think those other roles that fathers play are definitely overlooked, and we should talk about them more because they're important.
Well, thank y'all for tuning in. Episode 5 of King's Mentality, special Father's Day edition.
Hey, Dad.
Shout out to all the fathers out there, affecting change in a positive manner. We thank all of you for doing what you're doing and to continue in doing so.
Definitely all the fathers out there, man, keep doing what you're doing. You're greatly appreciated. You're needed. Definitely needed. So keep being great and keep doing you. And that's going to wrap up today's episode, King's Mentality. Y'all be great.
All right, take care, everyone. Stay safe.